After the radio show, maybe more than I don't know. Welcome back to Wellness Wave Radio. Thanks for tuning in this morning to ride the wave with us. Each week our goal is to give you at least one suggestion that will make your life a little better. Remember, everything we discuss on this show is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Always seek the guidance of your doctor. My name is Phil George. I'm a clinical biochemist, a certified personal trainer, and a health coach. I got an exciting show for you guys today. We got something entirely different. The way I met Nick initially was I was driving down 290, see this giant billboard that says "The Boy in the Closet," a national bestseller. And I go, wow, that looks interesting. So I have a radio show and I got a TV show, and I said, I wonder what this guy is all about. So what I did is I looked up there, looked at the website, typed it in, contacted Nick. I said, Nick, you want to come on my radio show? He goes, only if Don is. What is your exact title again?
Editor,
Editor came on. So we had him on both shows, and I think it's really good because Don actually brings a whole different perspective to this, which I really liked, and I like Don talk a little bit about his background in a second. What I really admired, and I highly recommend you read it. It's called "The Boy in the Closet." New York, it's a bestseller, and what I suggest you do, it's great because I love about it. It's all about Worcester. I recognized all the parts of Worcester. I recognized them all. I said, I remember that. And I went to Catholic school. I grew up Catholic, so I knew what everything was talking about. So if you've grown up in this area, you'll really be able to relate to it. But we only have a half an hour. We had a whole hour on the other show. Yeah. I want to get into and the whole thing is how to overcome adversity. And one thing I really admire about Nick is how he's overcome adversity. If you think you've had a hard life, you haven't heard of anything yet. You ain't heard of anything yet.
Yeah, that's right.
How he overcame it, and not only he grew up very poor. Grew up in can I use the word Grape Valley? Dysfunctional family.
Oh, beyond dysfunctional.
So if you think you got problems. You got heard nothing left, and I was joking because both Nick and I, grew up Catholic, and I like to call myself a Reformed Catholic now. Yeah. So basically, had to overcame a whole bunch of different types of adversity. And my joke to Nick was, you don't have to worry about going to purgatory because you're going to one way. You're already in the purgatory and hell here. So he's got a one-way ticket to heaven. So I'm going to get into Nick in a second, Hill's story, but Don, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Don Unger. I am retired right now. I spent a number of decades mostly teaching college writing, to some degree teaching gender studies and writing about fathers. Right now I do volunteer work for Pernay Family Health Center in Worcester, helping to run fathers groups, and going into the Worcester County House of Correction to also help facilitate a fathers group there. And I do a certain amount of editing, ghost writing, co-writing, that kind of thing. And essentially I sort of think of what Nick and I have done over 3 books now, basically, is that, Nick gives birth, but I get to be the midwife, essentially. So, these are his products, and I'm sort of facilitating him getting them out in the shape that he wants them in, basically.
Right, so if somebody out there said any plans of writing a book, we got a guy here that you may want to talk to. You can email me, philgeorge@charter.net, and I'll put you in touch with either Nick or Don. So now we get to the star of the show, sitting in the middle. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
And I'd like you to jump in too if you want to, Donald. Well, as you know, I grew up in Worcester. My mother was married 5 times by the time I was 21 years old. Very dysfunctional family. Sexually abused not by one but by 2 priests. Also raped at the age of 18. Still a virgin. Went to art school, brutally raped. And I had realized at that point that if that's all that men wanted from me, then they were going to pay. I was going to make them pay, and make them pay daily. I became a high-priced cowboy, and I was just out to, pull myself out of the rafts, the hell that I was living in. One stepfather was a Nazi. He was in Hitler Youth Corps, who would beat me on a daily basis. He would actually take me to the church at Wachusett at the reservoir, and that was his favorite place to beat me, within that shell. and I would pick out my own switch, belt, whatever method he was going to use that day. That's what he would beat me with. But you know, each stepfather had a major psychological problem. You know, one was bisexual, one was a homosexual, and my mother knew nothing about this in the 1950s, being married to these men. And then, of course, you know, me being gay, it was always fallen upon me. You're just like your father. This is why you do this. So, you know, at 16 years old, my mother paid a friend of mine to beat the gay out of me, to beat this out of me. And just a very hard emotional life. I was an alcoholic, I was a drug addict. I went down every path that anyone could go down. But I was a hard-working individual. I was also, like I say, a professional art thief. I stole over $2 million worth of art. Never was caught, but and I'm glad of that. But again, like I say, Phil, I've spent the last 25 years of my life giving back to society, to charity, to people, and I've given back millions of dollars.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I remember from the book, if I remember correctly, everything that he stole, he made a point to get back and give it.
I gave it back. I donated it. I went 25, 30 years later. I went back to the families that were wealthy. Woodstock, Vermont, you know, Woodstock, Connecticut, all these wonderful, rich areas. I went back. These people were dead, but their family would be like, well, we don't need it. Why are you doing this? I wouldn't go into detail and explain as to why I was doing it, per se, but I'm like, look, you need to accept this money. You need to accept this jewelry. You need to accept this silver. Whatever it was I gave them, you needed to accept it. I would take no for an answer.
For somebody who was really horrifically mistreated by the church, Nick has a really keen sense of penance, you know, a keen sense of repentance and of you know, paying back. You know, so he's not just saying things are different now. He's tried to act on that.
That reminds me of that step rule with Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
Yeah.
You have to go back and apologize to anybody that
Make amends.
Make amends.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it was. And even though you didn't have a protocol from AA to do this, you kind of did this because. And again, I'm assuming you just have an intrinsic feeling of what's correct.
What's correct.
Yeah, correct. So I mean,
but I lived a double life though, Phil. I mean, you know, here I was, working hard all day, either at, you know, Holy Cross, Dartmouth College, whatever. I had great jobs. But then again, you know, a professional thief, addict, alcoholic. You know, again,
none of those things unusual in kitchens.
Right.
Restaurant
Yes,
kitchens,
true,
institutional
always.
kitchens, a lot of drug use,
Always.
a lot of theft.
Yeah, always, definitely. I mean, the merchandise was there. I mean, you didn't have to go far in the 80s, 90s, 70s. It was there. But, you know, but I felt in order for me to move forward, because I worked with so many people, I would supply all the art and antiques to the people at Dartmouth. My ex was a pharmacist who, again, you know, brutally raped me, drugged me. It was a nightmare. And how I escaped that situation, I'll never know. You know, I mean, there were many days I thought I would shoot him and kill him, and I should have. But I walked away from $1 million. I had to. It was either my sanity or walk away.
The other story I liked in the book that I thought that was kind of profound is either your mother or your father sent you to this particular Catholic school, and you had to like sweep the floor.
I was 10 years old. I worked. My stepfather, the Nazi at the time, felt that it was a good idea for my brother and I to go to a parochial school. And we didn't have any money. No money. I was working pumping gas at a gas station at 10 years old. My mother was 6 months pregnant. I raised that baby at 10 years old, my younger brother, who, by the way, was kidnapped and abducted in 1974 at Howe Park. So, you know, he was like, well, the only way we can pay for tuition is you have to work. And there was nothing more humiliating, Phil, than to see these rich kids treat me the way they treated me, the disrespect, the abuse, because I felt this was what I had to do. I didn't know any better, but we swept, we mopped the floors, we buffed the floors. And let me tell you, it was humiliating.
Yeah, the audience can imagine what it's like being that age.
At that age.
At that age, and having, because the most important thing at that age is peer acceptance, right, Don? So you're over there, and everybody's looking down on you. So again, you have this all this other trauma you had to deal with on top of this. And I mentioned to Nick quite a few times. It's amazing. It's amazing. He's even alive.
I agree.
Because I mean, just the trauma with all of it. And the other thing that I want to definitely touch on, because this actually has astonished me. He's got dyslexia. And what happens is, and he types. It was funny.
I don't own a computer, and I'm a writer.
But so many writers, they like that feel, right, of the typewriter. I mean,
I don't own a typewriter. I write it out manually by hand, 50 notebooks at a time.
But I think also writing is tremendously personal. You know, I used to have friends who would say, you want to write? Well, take a yellow legal pad and a pencil and go up and sit by the lake. So I don't want to do that. That's not at all interesting. So different people. It's a question of finding your own rhythm and finding sort of what works with you. Yeah. And then if you're lucky and you can sort of integrate what more than one person does, then I think you get a bigger totality.
It took me 10 years to write the first book.
Yeah, but again, what happened when we first started communicating, I didn't know that you had dyslexia.
Yeah.
So he was sending me stuff, and I'm like,
what's going on? I couldn't relate to what you were sending me.
We go back and forth. And then finally, when he told me,
I was crying.
when he told me he had dyslexia, now the light bulb went off in my head. Oh, that's the reason why. I just thought he was like doing cocaine or doing something.
I wish, but no.
And that's also in terms of the kind of luck that we have or don't have growing up. And Nick will point out, he and I were in high school around the same time, graduated around 1980. At that time, dyslexia, the diagnosis of learning disabilities and that sort of thing, much less. Much less in terms of services, much less in terms of legal guarantees of what you're entitled to if you have those disabilities. So, if he were going to school now, he would likely have a team of people who caught that early and began working with him on it and helping him. He didn't get that help.
I would have such panic and anxiety attacks in class. I would skip school, not go, get stoned, whatever method it took. But I would literally break down and cry. I did not want that teacher calling upon me. Because if they asked me to read in class, I couldn't do it.
So you must have thought you were stupid, right?
Always. I knew I wasn't, but I did.
And what you're saying.
Yes.
And the other thing is what I found, it was interesting, after the radio show that we had, I had a bunch of people calling after and said, I have dyslexia.
Yeah.
The other thing is the ADHD.
Yeah.
Like people call it now their superpower. Because they get so much done. But, look at the butterfly.
Well, I've got that obsessive compulsive disorder.
But it's what happens, but people with ADHD, I can say this, my wife watches this, my wife's got ADHD. She gets more done in an hour than most people get in a day.
Do, right.
If you want something done, go to my wife. I mean, if you want somebody with ADHD, you want it done, go to the person with ADHD because they're they're going to get it done. It's so many people that are so successful, and I don't know, but I'm guessing dyslexia may be the same way.
Well, I mean, often what happens with dyslexia, and the way that I think it probably has affected Nick, is that people who are not literary, they're not letter-based, they can be more graphic. So they have pictures in their heads more, and what Nick has done in terms of antiques and art and that kind of thing, the stuff that he can hold in his head, the images, where things come from, and sort of tracing them. So he's not doing it in words.
I have to see it visually.
Right? He's certainly not writing it down. But it's not that there's less in there, it's that it's organized differently, basically. And as you said, there is an advantage. There is an advantage to being dyslexic. Other things get more powerful.
That reminds me of something called synesthesia. Because you've heard synesthesia. Okay.
If you do acid, synesthesia would be I can hear the color.
Okay.
There's a famous book called Born on a Blue Day, and there was a guy with Asperger's syndrome, and he wrote the book. And what would happen, he could do pi to the millionth place in his head. He would, instead of seeing numbers, he would see colors, and the colors would all go together. He could do any formula. You give him any numbers, he'd see it in colors. It's called synesthesia. In other words, you would hear colors, and you would see colors, whatever. So you're it's kind of messed up in your head. But I like to call it almost like a superpower. So again, I think with
my books were already outlined in my head. Even though I couldn't put them all down on paper.
But everybody says that. Everybody says that. If you ask 99% of Americans, do you have a book? They'll say, yes, I just need the time to sit down and pour it out. And, 95% of Americans can't do that. They think it's just a matter of time and spilling stuff out. really writing is rewriting.
It's a lot of work.
Sort of talk about the number of times we go through drafts.
Oh my God, yeah.
Just over and over and over. You know, what this
Because I'm a
comma.
perfectionist, he's a perfectionist. And I'm a historian. I'm from Worcester. I'm proud of my city. I'm the one who did all that research because I grew up in the city. I want to bring out the best of the city. I want people to know about the city. I mean, in my first book, Johnny and Baby Jumbo, that we worked on together, I mean, we talk about the first African-American millionaires in the country. Long before anybody talked about that, because I grew up at the Prospect House in Worcester, which was a black community center, but I'm proud of my friends, my upbringing, even though it was hell, but I learned so much. And I want to pay it forward. That's the name of the game today, paying it forward.
And the other thing, again, you would know more than I do. Both you and Dawn would know more than I do. But I'm guessing too, your eye for those antiques, they may have something to do again with that kind of that superpower with dyslexia, because you came.
Well,
up...
I can make $30,000 at my best. I've done $30,000 in a week on items I've bought for like under $20.
But also, I mean, exactly
Right.
for the reason that you just
Right,
said, Phil, because
exactly.
he'll look at something that other
Yeah.
people are looking at,
Yeah.
and he will see
I know
things
it.
in it that other
Yes.
people won't, in
I
part
was
because he can
hallmarking
trace it back.
European silver the other day at Goodwill. No one else knew what those hallmarks were. They had not Googled, sir, but I knew automatically. But that's why I do another show called Hidden Treasures. And that's
you've been
why
on
I've
there
been
like
on
a
there.
zillion
I am
times.
the most asked guest of all times. I beat out Houdini's nephew. And I'm honored. But because people are fascinated by my story, my life, because they cannot believe that I brought in a Shreve Crumpenlow Eperon sterling worth $12,000 that I bought at Goodwill for $7.99
Yeah.
or $19, whatever it was at the time. But that happens every
What's that
single
called?
day.
What's that show called? Road Show Auctions?
Antique Roadshow?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you come up there and they sit
Yeah.
there. So you'll be one of these guys. So again,
I know them all. They won't let me on the show. I swear to God, they're all my friends. We all grew up together. But they're like, you're too. We want people who literally don't know what they're bringing. But like Peter Shimonsky, all these people, Gloria Lee, they're all my friends. And they're like, we love you, Nick. We know you're the best in this business. But we want somebody who found that trinket, a treasure, doesn't know what it is, but you're too knowledgeable. And I get it. On one aspect, I get it. But I still want to tell my story. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, but
It's like a card counter being excluded from the casino.
yeah, right,
But again, this show, again, it reminds me of kids on the spectrum with autism. They hire them for certain jobs, like say for coding. They see things that you just don't. I mean,
No, so the last place that I taught was MIT, and MIT is basically the mothership of Asperger's, basically. And I see myself as in a line of Aspergery people as well. And one of the words that the MIT kids would use that's useful here is neurotypical.
yeah.
Right? So some people are neurotypical, and they say that somewhat dismissively. You're saying these sort of other things people may view as spectrum disorder, literally, and they see it as a superpower.
They call it. They do. They call it their superpower.
Engineering brain.
And one of the things I talk about, I know somebody that's on the spectrum and can take a computer apart in his sleep and put it back together again. If he met you once, he would tell you the day he met you on.
Right.
If you told him your birthday, he would tell you the year you're born instantly.
I've known men like that.
It's just amazing. And they can just, and a lot of companies will specifically look up for kids on the spectrum, because they know they can just do things that other people.
They do good tech support. They don't do good sort of the social end of tech support. They don't do hand holding. They do the tech support. Fix the machine, not you.
That's the other thing at MIT. They have people come out there and they kind of show them how to socialize. That's the whole thing. They have they go out to the bars to pick up girls and stuff, and they sit over there and say this, and this, and they role play with it. So then they have the issue with socialization, but they have no issue in figuring out these particular things. So that's their. But we're all like that, right? Yeah. We all have deficiencies.
People are always judging me every day. You look at me, I carry a canvas bag. I look like a wreck. I look like a bum. But then again, when people get to know me, especially professional people, most of them apologize and say, I'm sorry, I misjudged you. I didn't realize you were this smart, you're this knowledgeable, you're this whatever. But I want to keep that low profile. I don't know any other life. You know what I mean? I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want to forget where my roots were. I don't want to forget where I came from, regardless of how rich or poor I am. I don't ever want to forget that.
Right. I think the other thing, I read this before. I saw on a YouTube, in fact, that says, how to judge a rich person. The rich, like, look at all the tech billionaires. I mean, they're wearing hoodies, they're wearing this, they're wearing that,
right, yeah.
and you would never. It was funny. I ran across this guy. I met this one guy. Went up to see him for some reason, and he's living in a shack in the middle of the woods. The guy was a multimillionaire, but he decided for whatever reasons he wanted to live like that. Because the whole thing is, if you're rich, you don't have to show off.
That's right. You don't have to.
It's the wannabes.
Right, yeah.
It's the
Exactly,
wannabes.
yes. Yeah.
In fact, Munger, Charlie Munger, what's his
Berkshire
name?
Hathaway.
Berkshire Hathaway. He says nobody needs a gold Rolex watch, and this guy could afford 10, a zillion of them. But the whole point is, it's the wannabes. They want this. They say there's the other famous book, The Millionaire Next Door. They talk about that. They don't drive the fancy cars. They don't have this. They don't have that, because the whole point is, I don't want to buy because you're trying to impress. You're trying to impress somebody.
Yeah. Well, I did a show one time in Fairleigh, Vermont, and I had probably, I don't know, $40,000 worth of stuff on the table. These two women came on in long mink coats. They were driving a Mercedes. They were Polish. They didn't know I spoke Polish. And each was talking to the other about how they were going to set me up and rob me. And I started speaking Polish to them. But you would never have thought that with these women. But I talk about that in my book. Because, like I say, I was a professional thief. I would wear mink coats in the 80s. I owned a $10,000 black llama mink coat. And I would go into a bar room and drop my coat on a pocketbook. And I would take that into the bathroom. And I would ransack it for drugs, jewelry, or money. I would never take licenses and then leave it. But, again, people are less likely to question you if you look rich, if you're educated, if you're handsome. And, I wasn't educated, but I had the others. And again, no one would ever think of accusing me. And the secret was, too, staying there, not leaving the scene of the crime.
Well, he also did things, he had accomplices like his grandmother.
Yes, my grandmother was my partner in crime. I stole all the china from the hotel in Montreal at the La Centre. And the last time we were there, it was Royal Doulton. I had never eaten off of Royal Doulton china. But going through customs, she yells out to the custom agent, "What have you got in the bag? The Royal Doulton china from the hotel?" Well, sure enough, that's what I had. But I mean, that went over years and years and years of going there. But I think I got a service for 12, probably like 168 pieces over the. But am I proud of that? No. No, but at the time, I needed to feed that addiction because I was being abused sexually, physically, mentally.
But
I
you
needed
also had to
something for
take
me.
care of your family.
Oh, I was
because
raising my 10-year-old.
I remember
Raising my brother.
And part of the book, you carried your mother to the hospital. You did
Oh
something.
yeah, I mean, my brother broke. One of the husbands left a Victorian door there. He made a mess of the apartment. We didn't have a refrigerator. We lived out of styrofoam coolers. We didn't have a dryer. We didn't have wash machines. I never had a shower in high school. All these kids would tell me this, and I didn't know what they were saying. I had no idea what they were saying. They would tell me they were going home to take a shower. I didn't know that. I had no idea what that was. I had to lie to them and tell them, yes, I do too. But, but you want to survive. Regardless of what my mother did to me, mentally, physically, abusively, I still loved her.
Yeah.
She was my mother, regardless of anything else. I could talk about it, but don't anybody else talk about her. Because my mother would steal my own artwork and antiques from me and sell them to other fences. And I would say to you, how can you do that to me? You're my mother. But it didn't matter. My mother was an addict, an alcoholic. She too had her own demons. I get it now, but I couldn't get it then.
I remember too. It's sometimes your mother needed this or that. You were the only one to be able to come up with the money somehow. So for you, it was a matter of survival. And one of the things I admire about you, Nick, is not only that. It's that you did it for the family. It wasn't just me.
I did it for my ex's family. I had a great position in New Hampshire. Wonderful, not Dartmouth, which I loved and worked for years, but another job. And they knew I was stealing food to feed a poor family, a family like of 11. They knew it, but they loved me that much. They pulled me in the office one day and I said, look, we know what you've done. You've taken like $40,000 worth of food in the last year or whatever. I said, I'm doing something wrong, but I'm trying to do it for the right reason. I apologize. I know it's wrong. but they forgave me. And it was wonderful. And, you know, like I say, I tried to always do the right thing for others, but not for myself. But, you know, that was the guilt I lived with, so I had to do that. Well, when the book came out, I gave over $100,000 worth of jewelry away for free. I gave it away. I donated it to the buyers of the book, to charities, schools, organizations, anyone, because I felt I needed to pay it forward. People are like, you're nuts. The lawyers are like, you're nuts. I'm like, why? Why am I nuts? Because I want to give away what I've worked so damn hard for. You know, because I haven't stolen a thing in 25 years, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that.
And again, everything I read, and Don, correct me if I'm wrong, everything I read really, it was always for somebody else. I never, anywhere in the book really, he was saying, I'm doing this for me. That was my, well, you have to obviously survive.
I think that's right. And I guess I would footnote that and say that what Nick has always wanted for himself and perhaps not being able to get in any reliable or useful way is love. You know,
love and education
is emotional connection, and
there's a little psychology in here, then, right? Because
of course.
A little bit.
Because I tell you, he's the smartest guy I know. You know, I mean, I envy him.
And that's what it could be. It could be that. I mean, let me ask you this. I never asked you this before. Did you feel that your mother loved you?
At times, but again, you know, when you have a 10-year-old son like me, my mother's taking Sinutab. She's taken Triminute cough syrup. She's taken every drug known. And then I'm emulating her. I'm drinking bottles of Triminute, taking Sinutabs. I'm going to the doctor, and he's like, you got hypertension, 10 years old. Why? Didn't ask what I was doing or why I was downing bottles and pills. But I felt because my mother did it, it must be good. My mother did it. She's okay. You know, she's not telling me it's wrong.
Or maybe just to squash the pain.
Right.
I mean, if you have to get a pain, why do people drink? Why do people do drugs? It's because they don't want to deal with reality.
Well, I took the abuse so my brothers wouldn't have to. And let's face it, a lot of kids do that. I said, I'll take the abuse and leave them alone. I'll take it. You know, but you take that baggage with you everywhere. Everywhere. And I have never had a normal relationship because of it. I mean, I've met some wonderful men. I've met some monsters. I mean, but I've taken that baggage with me everywhere. And
I mean, one of the parts of the title of the book is about Stockholm syndrome, right? Stockholm syndrome being when you're captured by some person or group of people, and you become sympathetic to your captor rather than the people outside who are trying to save you.
But it's kind of, we talked before a little bit about the evolution of biology. We're really smart monkeys when you come down to it. And we're basically group animals. So the whole thing is you want to fit into the tribe. Like we talked about you being at the school and being humiliated because you were obviously they saw you as the low end of the totem pole. Okay, it makes you feel awful. So the whole thing is you want to fit in. You want to fit into whatever clan you happen to be in. So I think that's the other reason.
Well, at 10 years old, 11, I worked for a church in Worcester. And I was a dishwasher for 3 days straight. I didn't sleep. I washed dishes. I forget how much I was paid now. But the matriarch was coming from Lebanon or over in the Middle East. And the men were coming into the kitchen, treating me like you know what. Here I am, this deep in dirty water, cleaning, mopping bathrooms, scrubbing floors. And I looked at those men and I said, look, they've got gold medallions. They're wearing beautiful jewels. The women were dressed impeccably. They were throwing gorgeous 1-ounce gold coins onto the stage for him. I vowed from that point forward when I went into the bathroom and I punched the walls because I was so angry with myself because I was so poor. Here I am at that age working again. I said, I'll never be poor again. Never. No matter what it took. I vowed I had to do it.
How many times did you heard that from
Scarlett.
successful people?
Yeah.
How many?
I know,
that's
but
right.
it's
I
true.
forgot.
No, but it's true.
I forgot.
It's true,
No,
though.
you're right.
But with me, it is true. And I know people say it, but I have walked that mile in those shoes. I know it. And that's why I help anybody who is an addict, whatever, sexual abuse, whatever.
Okay, we're coming up at the end of the show. They gave me the wrap up.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So So Don, how do they find out about Nick? Tell them about the book. How do they reach him? How do they reach him? How do they reach you?
So there are 3 books, 2 of them the Johnny and Baby Jumbo books 1 and 2, and we're looking at making a 3rd for a trilogy, and the first volume of Nick's memoir, The Boy in the Closet. All of that stuff is available on Amazon, either in paperback or Kindle, and also Nick's website, nickzwirblia.com, yeah? So you can get them there.
Email me, philgeorge@charter.net. I'll send over to Don or Nick. Thanks so much for tuning in. I highly recommend the book. It's extremely entertaining
Yes, it
and
is.
informative.
It's compelling, right? It keeps you
Yeah,
interested.
absolutely. Okay, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. One of the most common questions I'm asked as a biochemist and health coach is, what are the best supplements to take? Choosing supplements is a tricky business. Many companies have poor quality control and questionable ingredients. In the past, I had to send clients to several different websites. I am now able to offer one-stop shopping for all the quality brands I recommend with no shipping cost and a lower price in most cases. Just email me, philgeorge@charter.net, for a free consult.